police are looking for a suspect after a woman was shot and injured in Markham. It happened outside her home in the area of 14th Avenue and Kennedy Road yesterday evening. The disturbing incident caught on security camera. Tyreek Reed has the details.
What appears to be a normal interaction between this man and woman quickly turns violent. After spending several moments speaking outside her home, she turns around to walk back inside. That's when the man dressed in construction gear pulls out a gun and begins shooting at her, failing several times before getting the gun to work, injuring the woman. The suspect then runs into his vehicle and speeds off.
When our officers arrived on scene, they found a female that was suffering from a single gunshot wound. She was transported to hospital. Unfortunately, they were non-life-threatening injuries. But it's quite a concerning incident, particularly when this is in a residential intersection at 5:30 in the evening.
Officers say it happened here in the area of Lee Avenue and Noble Street on Tuesday. Police say the man did not attempt to rob her or the property, nor did the 41-year-old victim know her attacker. But officers believe the attack wasn't random.
But it does look very much like this address was specifically targeted. We believe that the suspect has disguised himself in plain sight by dressing in this construction equipment in order to have an interaction at this residence with our victim. We believe that this was a tool that was being used to almost trick her, bring her into a spot where he was then able to ambush her.
The shooting is the latest on the list of gun-related incidents that police say is growing in York Region.
We have seen a number of shootings over the last year, and it's very concerning, particularly for the ones that are happening in daylight such as this. And this is by no means the only incident of its type that's happened in Markham. Our chief, Jim McSween, is constantly focusing on the importance of getting illegal firearms off the street, as well as focusing in on things like bail reform. It's something that we see time and time again. And we are out there every day making sure our officers are trying to respond to calls like this to get these guns off the street.
Officers say the victim has since been released from hospital. They're asking anyone with information to come forward. Tyreek Reed, CBC News, Markham.
A man and his 3-year-old daughter are dead after being hit by a car in Pickering last night. Police say they were killed moments after exiting their own vehicle on the side of the road following another collision they were involved in. Greg Ross has those details.
Durham Regional Police were called just after 8 o'clock last night after a collision at the intersection of Brock Road and Taunton Road in Pickering.
A Honda was making a left westbound turn at the intersection when it struck a Nissan traveling southbound.
Police say the Honda continued driving westbound on Taunton for more than 300 meters before crashing again, this time into a guardrail, eventually stopping in a ditch. The driver of the Honda then got out of his car with his young daughter.
A 40-year-old male and a 3-year-old female exited the Honda and were walking along the roadway when they were struck by a BMW. Officers arrived on scene and located the 40-year-old male without vital signs. He was transported to a local area hospital where he was pronounced deceased. The 3-year-old female was transported to a Toronto area trauma center where she was also unfortunately pronounced deceased.
It's not clear why the man got out of his car with his daughter. The part of Taunton they were on does not have streetlights and it was dark, which may have made it difficult for the driver of the BMW to see them.
It looks like they may have been attempting to cross a very busy road, not at the intersection, and it's not somewhere that a driver would expect to see a pedestrian typically.
The posted speed limit on Taunton, where he was walking, is 70 kilometers per hour. Police believe the driver of the Honda may have been attempting to walk back to the scene of the first crash. Police say that it appears the driver of the Honda was at fault in the original collision that happened here in the intersection, and at this point, they haven't laid charges against either of the other two drivers.
Both vehicles were proceeding through the intersection on a green light. However, the Honda was making a left turn where the Nissan had the right-of-way.
Police say they are still investigating both collisions. The drivers of the Nissan and the BMW both sustained minor injuries and are expected to be okay. Greg Ross, CBC News, Pickering.
The OPP are investigating a fire in Orillia yesterday as an act of arson. The blaze destroyed a heritage building in the city's historic downtown area. Police believe the fire was intentionally set after receiving videos from nearby businesses.
Through the videos, there was a suspicious person who was observed igniting a small fire nearby, and that is believed to be the fire that has led to the damage scene.
Police and fire crews were called to Peter and Mississauga streets just before 7:30 Tuesday morning. The fire broke out in the first floor of the building and quickly spread to the second floor. No one was hurt, but fire officials say the building likely cannot be saved. Sources tell CBC News an early provincial election call could come as soon as next week. And it's clear Doug Ford and his government are prepared to fight the next campaign on the issue of Donald Trump and his proposed tariffs. Queen's Park reporter Lorena Redekop has the latest, including reaction from the opposition.
Premier Doug Ford could trigger an early election call as early as next week. That's according to sources close to his government. The sources say they expect the campaign to start next week or the following one. The premier wouldn't commit publicly today.
Stay tuned. But we need a mandate from the people. We need a mandate to protect and possibly spend billions of dollars to protect people's jobs, to protect businesses, and to protect communities.
That spending following tariffs by the U.S. government coming February 1st, according to President Donald Trump, then counter tariffs by Canada. Ford spoke following a meeting, virtually this time, with the other premiers and the Prime Minister. Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith still not on side with the others. She doesn't want oil and gas to become a bargaining chip in any tariff war.
As I said to the premiers, you can't bring a knife to a gunfight. Usually the guy with a knife loses when in a gunfight.
Tariffs could become an expensive issue in Ontario, and they're what Ford and his government want to fight the next election on. The Economic Development Minister has been talking tariffs in several U.S. states, most recently in Washington, D.C. for the inauguration.
You just will not find anybody who believes that these tariffs are going to help anybody.
He was also asked about campaigning in winter.
I don't speculate on what it will be like to campaign. You know, I'm ready anytime the Premier tells us that we're going to go to a campaign.
Early election buzz already started last May, when the Premier refused to rule out going to the polls early, well before tariffs were in the picture.
This is about Mr. Ford wanting to gain more seats when he already has a majority. This isn't about standing up to Mr. Trump.
If there is a winter election, the opposition will be fighting to keep other issues front and center.
If he intends to go to the polls, then I think the question people will be asking themselves on Election Day is also, is my life any better today than it was 7 years ago?
Today, right after speaking to reporters, Ford popped back out. The camera's still rolling.
Off the record, you guys, your bosses are going to love it. There's maybe tons of advertising.
Yet another indication that the election call is coming, well before that fixed election date of June 2026. Lorena Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Students at Centennial College are reacting after the school announced it is suspending 49 programs. The college says the decision was inevitable as it deals with the fallout of the federal government's cap on international study permits.
For me, it doesn't make sense that my course would be taken out as one of the things that new or upcoming students would want to enroll to.
It's pretty shocking. You know, I know a few good professors I had for the last 3 semesters. It's really unfortunate to see that the layoffs.
The college expects new international student enrollments to decline 43% in the current school cycle. Now, current students enrolled in the impacted programs will still get to graduate. Suspended programs include international business, hospitality and tourism, communications and media, and health studies. A proposed expansion of a long-term care home is causing a divide in Toronto's Yorkville neighborhood. Now, advocates argue the move would provide crucial care to vulnerable seniors. But as Julian Nope explains, some residents say their frustrations are being ignored.
Ida White visits her 100-year-old mother at Belmont House every day. Her mother moved to the nonprofit retirement home 3 years ago. It's just 15 minutes from Ida's house.
As soon as Belmont called me, I didn't hesitate, not for a moment, because the location, one of the main things.
White's mom secured one of the 221 spots at the Yorkville facility. The home says more than 1,500 people remain on the wait list. 180 of those people are in crisis. But it's now one step closer to changing that.
Item as amended, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
A proposal to expand the facility was approved at Toronto and East York Community Council. The 11-story addition would add 168 long-term care beds and 30 assisted living units. But the plan drew heavy opposition. Some Belmont Street residents are concerned the development will hurt the character of the street, eliminate green space, and create more traffic problems.
The street's blocked every day by emergency vehicles, right? So, yeah, like we've asked for things like that, and they've said they'll look into it, but basically they've ignored us.
Some residents also worry about the shadow that will be created from the new 11-story build.
Our house was built in the 80s, and it was designed in such a way to be heated by the sun, and we're going to lose a lot of our sunlight. And so I think that's unfortunate.
This is going to be a good...
This small group of housing advocates say those reasons don't outweigh the urgent need for more senior housing.
We cannot stop building near our subway stations with these kinds of projects for something just because somebody in a house from the 1800s across the street might get a little bit of shadow on their tomato plants.
University Rosedale councillor Diane Sachs agrees.
It's enormously important, both to seniors and their families, to have long-term care beds where people live so that your friends and family can visit you.
In a letter to the city in December, the community group ABC Residents Association implored staff to consider building on the south side of the site along Davenport. But Belmont says this would cost an extra $10 to $20 million. As it stands, the project carries a price tag of $120 million, which will be funded by the province and through donations. Those with loved ones living in the home hope the expansion passes its final stages of approval.
A facility like this with access to public transit, as well as being in a convenient location, is very good for family and friends.
The proposal will go before Toronto City Council in February. Julie Nope, CBC News, Toronto.
A 23-year-old man has been charged after a vehicle plunged into Lake Ontario last weekend, leaving a woman dead. Police were called to Ashbridges Bay Park Sunday evening for a marine rescue involving a vehicle that ended up in the water. Investigators say 2 people were in the vehicle, but only the driver was able to get out on his own. Officers were able to bring the second passenger, a 25-year-old woman, back to shore, but she died of her injuries. The driver of the vehicle has been charged with dangerous operation causing death. Every year, the Toronto Police Marine Unit is tasked with rescuing people who've fallen through the ice. Today, members were on the frigid lake doing rescue drills to make sure they're ready when called upon. Ali Chiasson has more.
This is a drill where someone's fallen through the ice. Marine Unit officers in special thermal gear spring into action to hoist the person back to safety. In real life, they have to work fast because a person can die in minutes going through the ice in the Toronto harbor.
It doesn't matter how much I had on, I felt the cold right away. As you can see, I've been out about less than 5 minutes and I'm already frozen.
And that's with a heavy-duty dry suit on. Imagine the person being rescued after plunging into the harbor, which happens all too frequently.
There's been several instances of dogs going onto the ice and people running out onto the ice to save their own dogs, but they're not dressed, they don't have a life jacket, they don't have thermals on.
They also see people go under while skating.
We're starting to see more and more reports of people on the ice.
Skating on open bodies of water is not allowed in Toronto because of how unpredictable the ice conditions can be. Actually, a man died just earlier this month skating around Toronto Island. The Marine Unit folks that we spoke with today said they'd like to see more signage around the Toronto harbor warning people of the danger. With the island ferries and commercial shipping boats constantly cracking through the ice, there are patches that are much thinner than they look.
That minute of panic, chances are when you go through, and you will go through fast, and it's no point of return at that time unless you have a life jacket on, you'll go right under and gone.
These officers train like this every day. In polar vortex temperatures, even the rescues are death-defying. But there's another important part of the job, getting the word out.
Definitely do not go on the ice. It's not safe.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
A major and rare winter storm is slamming the southern United States from Texas to the Florida Panhandle. New Orleans got a record 24-centimeter snowfall. People are also dealing with ice and freezing temperatures. The weather has prompted the first ever blizzard warnings for several coastal areas near the Texas-Louisiana border. Welcome back. A broken power rail on Line 1 caused major headaches for TTC riders today. A portion of the line was shut down for around 6 hours, leaving commuters waiting in the freezing cold for shuttle buses. Dale Manukduk has this story.
A fleet of shuttle buses arriving at Lawrence West Station to pick up the crowds of people pouring out of the subway. There was no service between Lawrence West and Wilson stations, a big inconvenience during the morning rush.
This is an all the time thing. Nighttime, daytime, doesn't matter, all the time.
And I just had one more station to go to and it shut down. And it's like, what is it, -21 right now? It's so cold.
It was between 4 and 5 a.m. that crews discovered a chunk of the power rail missing at Yorkdale Station. No one knows what happened yet. That will be part of an investigation.
We certainly recognize and acknowledge the frustration for our customers this morning, particularly given the cold temperatures, having to get off the subway on a bus and then back on the subway. It's not a great way to start the morning.
There was about a 10-minute delay on the entirety of Line 1, the initial deployment of shuttle service causing crowding as people transferred off the trains and buses.
Those initial periods when we're still deploying the shuttle buses, they are critical for us, but you know, there are often delays in terms of getting the buses there because they're coming from other parts of the system.
While the cavalry eventually came, it wasn't quick enough for some.
I'm running late to my work. I usually take around 20 minutes.
I had a tutorial class today that ran for 1 hour. I got there at the last 5 minutes and I left.
So just to be clear, this is your second time taking the trip this morning already?
Yeah, in the last hour. Because I went downtown and I had to come all the way right back up.
Just before noon, everything was back up and running.
Essentially, they have to splice the rail, so they have to go in there. They have to, first of all, isolate the power, make sure they can do the work safely, and then essentially replace a section of the power rail. It's a temporary fix.
Crews will be back to work tonight for a permanent fix. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Members of the Jane and Finch community are inviting people and companies to write them off, but not in the way you might expect. As Brittany Billette tells us, those behind the initiative say it will benefit the community's youth.
Jane and Finch is a resilient community.
A community that's strong but often stereotyped as a place associated with guns and gangs, youth workers say.
In the Jane and Finch community, we've been written off for years, especially the youth.
The Jane Finch Center says it launched a new fundraising campaign as a way to challenge prejudice and shed light on inequities. It's offering anti-bias training to businesses and individuals in exchange for a donation that comes with a tax receipt.
What we want to do now is reclaim our narrative. Jane and Finch is a vibrant, beautiful community. The bias training is actually focusing on a lot of the beautiful and positive things that the community is showcasing.
There's a sense of ownership.
And what campaign creators want people to know is that their youth is as bright and promising as any.
And so if we can just reshape or recalibrate our perspectives of people coming out of communities, we might be able to find the next big scientist, the next filmmaker, the next Prime Minister. We don't know.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion experts say it's an initiative that can help change people's perspectives.
And there's nothing more effective in getting people to pause and think and want to learn than when people share their own stories.
The training is part of the journey of education, awareness, understanding, and then taking meaningful steps towards positive social change.
Many companies already have a form of anti-bias training, but at least one business president says this particular experience stood out from the rest.
The 4 contributors share their stories and really provide some eye-opening examples for us on their life experiences, right? And they deliver it in such an impactful way that it's very different than what we would, see in our typical training.
And that's because it isn't typical.
So the people that actually face the bias aren't always the ones making the bias training, benefiting financially from the investment. And so it's kind of a win-win.
Programs and initiatives ran by the Jane Finch Center will benefit directly from the fundraiser.
We offer youth programming, mental health services, financial literacy. My project with the youth violence prevention is very important because we're giving youth a first opportunity, but a second chance at being community leaders and the importance of kind of like mentoring the next generation.
A way to support future change makers by celebrating and showcasing who they are today. Brittany Billette, CBC News, Toronto.
Okay, Chris, question for you.
Okay.
Is there any relief from this cold anytime soon?
It's been a while since we've dealt with this. And I mean, you know, a lot of people tend to argue, hey, it's Canada.
Yeah.
We have to embrace the cold. We have to deal with it. But it has been a long time since we've encountered wind chills in the -20s. In fact, earlier this morning, temperatures were anywhere from -16 to -21 across the GTA. But with the winds, which were a little breezy, it felt almost as low as -30 in some locales, which is obviously well below where we should be for this time of year. -10.9 is the normal overnight low. -2.4 is the normal daytime high. And we peaked at around -11 during the afternoon. -9 in Oshawa. -13 through Barrie, Windsor was at around -11. We have some weather advisories in place, not for the GTA, across the Lake Huron and Georgian Bay shoreline. There's winter weather travel advisories. There's snow squall warnings as well. This is thanks to a system that will move across the upper Great Lakes. It's fairly moisture starved, so it's not going to give, you know, widespread snowfall. The only moisture it's really gathering is from the Great Lakes, so it's going to be, once again, the eastern shoreline of the Great Lakes that gets into some of that action. We'll likely escape with just on and off flurries, starting off through the overnight, continuing through tomorrow morning. It looks like maybe a light dusting to a centimeter on the north end. The winds will then start to shift because they become a stabilizing wind through the overnight. They're coming in from the south and will hold on to southerly winds into the day on your Thursday. By Thursday night into Friday, the wind shifts a little bit. More of a northwesterly wind briefly kicks in, so that might once again create some local lake effect snow off of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay along the south and southeastern shorelines. We escape with maybe a couple of rogue snowflakes. It will be a little cold Friday morning. By the afternoon, temperatures recover into the minus mid-single digits, which is obviously a far cry from where we should be for this time of year, where a lot of people would like it to be, so you can get out and enjoy some outside activities. Maybe you're an outside worker, maybe you know people that are vulnerable. Obviously the last couple of nights, last night, even tonight is going to be very noticeable, but things will get better by the weekend, I assure you. In terms of snowfall accumulations, very minimal if most across the GTA. Like I said before, Lake Huron, Georgian Bay gets the 1-2 punch, first with the lake enhanced snow, then the lake effect snow. Overnight lows will actually be lower during the first half of the overnight and then gradually climb as the southerly winds kick in. So it's not going to be balmy tomorrow during the morning. It's still probably going to feel like -20, but it's not going to feel like -30. By the afternoon, we kind of double up what we had today, -5 your high, which is still technically seasonably cool, considering once again that normal daytime high is -2. We're at -5 again for Friday. Saturday flurries by the afternoon and evening with a high of -3. We will approach the 0-degree mark, Kelda, for Sunday, and will likely be seasonable again for Monday. So that's your forecast. We do step out of the deep freeze, but hey, you know, it is winter. Embrace it, but it does get dangerous to some.
Yeah, I've never been so happy to see a high of -1. That's all I'll say. That's all the time we have tonight. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.